This is Edge of the Box, a podcast brought to you by WhoScored.com.
Hello, welcome to the Edge of the Box podcast, a podcast by WhoScored, proudly sponsored by BetVictor. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, joined as ever by Jonathan Wilson and Martin Laurence, two of the most impressive football talkers around on the pod. Martin here as well, repping WhoScored. This is episode 2 of 8, so make sure you subscribe with your post notifications on so that you don't miss a thing. Jonathan, Euros are imminent now. What are your excitement levels like?
Oh, massive. Over the top. Bubbling over. Can't wait.
I didn't think I'd get a serious answer to that question. Martin, how about you?
Yeah, today actually it's ramped up a little bit. We've been so busy with sort of getting out content and stuff like that, planning things like this. So you don't really get a chance to think about it, even though you're working on it constantly. But yeah, this morning I had a little bubble. So yeah, looking forward to it.
I mean, if you want a serious answer, it's just really strange for me because this is the first tournament I won't have been at since 2002. So there's a little bit of me looking forward to, because you actually do miss quite a lot of tournaments when you're away covering them. Obviously, the games you're at, you experience in a very, very different way and probably a more nuanced way. But you're always having to travel. You're always having to go to press conferences and things, and so you do miss stuff. So there's a little bit of me quite looking forward to sitting in front of a telly for 4 weeks and absorbing it all.
Yeah, different perspective for you. You can see what us mere mortals feel like during a football tournament, Jonathan, but I'm sure you'll enjoy it either way. England, Croatia is obviously what we're going to start with, the big game on Sunday. I always find like I'm looking forward to the Euros, and then the first few days I'll really enjoy it, and then the nerves will start to kick in for England. Martin, did the friendlies do anything to appease your nerves? Did they make them worse? Are you approaching it now with more trepidation than you were?
Yeah, definitely am. I actually missed the first half of the Romania game. So I was out. I had it on the radio.
Too much about it.
I know. Yeah, I had it on the radio, and certain players were getting quite a lot of flack. I got back for the second half, and it didn't get a whole lot better. But yeah, I suppose you can take the positives in terms of clean sheets, but they were very fortunate clean sheets, especially the Romania game. So more questions than answers for sure, I think, coming out of those.
Well, I think the way you've got to look at it is, yeah, if this was your club and these are the last 2 pre-season friendlies before the league campaign starts, and you had 2 scruffy 1-0 wins and a couple of players didn't play that well, and a player who maybe hadn't been in your thinking for the first choice 11 has 2 good games, does that really change your thinking going into the league season? I'm not really sure it does. International football, obviously, there are a lot fewer games, a quarter or a fifth of the number of games each season. But I different countries take friendlies with different levels of seriousness. I think, given the absence of the players who've been in the 2 European finals, given I think there was a conscious effort to give certain players minutes to get time in their legs, I wouldn't be too hung up on them. Grealish, I guess, is the complication that comes out of those games. He did play very well. He was England's best player going forward by some margin. He's obviously done that much more to enhance his reputation for perhaps coming in for Foden or coming off a bench for Foden if things don't go well. Defensively, I think there are concerns, Mings particularly. I feel like I'm picking on Villa players here, sorry.
We like it to be about Villa, Jonathan, that's fine.
And that may encourage me to play White in that first game, which I wouldn't have said at 4:45 on Sunday.
Martin, what do you make of those comments? Mings is coming in for some stick, isn't he? I mean, out of everyone that played in those 2 friendly games, he seems to be the one who's taking the brunt of the criticism. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah,
well, there were issues in both games, weren't there? So obviously I actually thought, aside from the ridiculous sort of barge on Kalajdzic in the Austria game, which he was obviously fortunate to get away with, but has spoken about since and said he doesn't do that if he knows VAR's in play, which is fair enough, but still you'd hope he wouldn't do that anyway. But other than that, in that game, I actually thought he played very well. And I thought when he went off and Godfrey came on, who obviously had some troubles, England looked more disorganised. And I think that's one of Tyrone Mings' strengths is his leadership and his vocal presence at the back. And that's something that Southgate will value. Like I said, I actually missed the first half of the Romania game, which is when he was supposed to have had most of his struggles. So yeah, I think it's quite unfair, some of the criticism, but at the same time, if you make some errors in both games, then you are going to get picked on. But there were other players that made errors as well. So I do think it's slightly unfair, but at the same time, he didn't perform to the standards that you would want heading into a tournament.
Yeah, but I think that leadership point is key about Mings. That I don't say Stones is somebody who needs talking through games, but we've seen he's really benefited at City this season alongside Ruben Dias, somebody who is that dominant presence. And I think the way Mings plays, he could fulfill a similar function for England. So I can see how that partnership could work, and whether White in his first competitive game for England, or only his third cap overall, whether he'd be prepared or willing to do that, I'm less sure. So in terms of getting a leader there, I can still see a logic in playing Mings.
I guess there's Cody as well, who might come into the conversation, but as Mings played both, you'd imagine he's probably edged ahead, and the fact he's left-footed, which always helps.
Well, and Martin, I just don't like Cody in a 2.
No, normally I wouldn't.
He's got to be the centre of a 3. Yeah.
Martin, I find the Mings slander in some parts a little bit strange, because we're talking as if John Stones does never make mistakes. I mean, John Stones pretty much single-handedly through the Nations League for us. Again, it's Holland, I think it was. And what I like about Mings is if he makes a mistake, he doesn't dwell on it. He'll do something good a minute later. Whenever I watch John Stones and he makes a mistake, I think, there's something else going to happen here very, very shortly. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, but I guess then that would sort of compound the worry that if you've got two players that
I've talked him out inadvertently there.
Yeah, probably not the best pairing. But yeah, I like I said, I think he's been slightly over the top, and he's got his qualities beyond his sort of vocal traits as well. He's obviously very good in the air. One thing I really actually do like about Tyrone Mings, which doesn't get credit, I don't think, because it doesn't bear out in stats, is his ability to play long balls over the top of opposition defenders, because he knows that's a nightmare, and he's excellent at that for Villa. Whether that's really a ploy that England would adopt, I don't think it is, but he does have strings to his bow, and I feel like there's usually a scapegoat, isn't there, ahead of a tournament. I just worry that Mings might be a front runner already for that.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, at the current point, we're going to come on to talking systems and stuff. We haven't got a clue how we're going to line up or what the system's going to be. Jonathan, you touched on the Champions League players being absent, which is quite a unique caveat, really, in the warm-up games, the fact that England haven't had many of their best players to choose from. How many of those players that have been missing do you think come into the starting 11?
Well, I think Walker probably will start at right back. Stones, I'm pretty sure, will be the right-sided centre-back. It could be Shaw or it could be Chilwell. So there's potentially 3 of the back 4. And then I see it is a back 4, which obviously we don't know. But the fact that England have played a back 4 in the last 5 games, I'd be slightly surprised if they reverted to the back 3. Rice obviously is not a problem. Calvin Phillips or Henderson, not a problem with that. Mount, I'm pretty sure, will play. So that's up to 4. Foden 5. Could be Sterling. So potentially as many as 6. I think 4 or 5 is more likely. But Rashford, of course, as well is an option rather than Sterling. I don't think both would play. So yeah, it's likely to be at least 4 and maybe as many as 6.
Yeah, Martin, I mean, the talk in the press is that we will play 3 at the back. There's a lot of talk actually in the media that Luke Shaw might line up at left centre-back with Kyle Walker at right centre-back, which is quite strange because that will mean 4 fullbacks on the pitch, which I'm not sure has ever been done in a back 5 before. I don't think I like the sound of that. Where do you sit with it?
I mean, they've obviously played there, and you've got James who's played right-sided centre-back as well.
Yeah.
I just worry the message that gives out to the centre-backs in the squad. If I was Tyrone Mings or Conor Cody, who's obviously played in a 3, if England play with a 3 without Cody, why is he there really? And I'd worry if I was Mings and to a lesser extent White, if you're playing fullbacks at centre-back over me, basically, I would worry about that. I don't think it sends out a great message. I don't think anyone will kick up a fuss, but you will get some disgruntlement, I'd imagine. So it could happen. I wouldn't be completely opposed to it, but I'd maybe worry about the sort of internal dynamics of the squad if we only play one centre-back, basically.
I mean, I'm less worried about Walker playing as the right side of 3 because we've seen him do it, and also as well at City. Often he tucks in to play sort of as an auxiliary midfielder, so that's a more similar role, and we know he can do that. I'm not sure Shaw's ever played in that position before. I'd have said Shaw's gifts are and more going forward than defensively. So that would really worry me. But the thing, if you play Walker on the right, does that mean Stones is playing as a central one? Because I don't feel comfortable with that either.
Yeah,
I'd rather have Stones as the right and Cody as a central one. And then Walker's, to be honest, probably not there, because I think the other two, Trippier and James, are both better going forward. So that troubles me, that idea.
Yeah, I'd completely agree. If we are going to play a back three without Maguire, then I would play Cody. I would play him in the middle, and then to a lesser extent, you don't need Mings as much in that case, because Cody's very good vocally as well. But yeah, I would definitely worry about John Stones being sort of the so-called leader in a back three. I think Shaw has played there a few times, but I think he's needed Maguire alongside him to do that. And he obviously won't be there. So yeah, that would worry me a little bit.
Stones was in the middle of the three, wasn't he, throughout the World Cup, but he had Maguire and Walker next to him.
Yeah.
I'm the same as you. You're then looking at him to be that dominant centre-half, Jonathan, and that isn't really his game at all. And also,
also, you think so. You think of the Croatia semi-final, and I would say that Stones-Walker axis was at least partially at fault for both Croatia goals.
Yeah, because you got Rebic and Perisic, who are both decent in the air as well, coming in at the back post. I think that would actually cause England more problems than it would eradicate any. Yeah,
I'd agree. I mean, whether Rebic plays wide or whether he plays as a sort of false nine, I think. Either way, you're right. The Croatian threat at the back post is real, and so I'd be reluctant to have a pair of fullbacks, one on either side.
Yeah, Jonathan just talked of one lesson that we could have learned from that game in 2018, Martin. What other lessons have we learned from that other than Luka Modric is a very good footballer?
I think the narrative sort of going into that game was that England should win, but also that England should win because we should have more energy, because Croatia had played a couple of games in extra time, hadn't they, in the knockouts before that. And the idea was that Croatia are just going to run out of steam. There's just no way that they can keep this up. And if anything, it went the other way. Croatia just grew. They just grew and grew into the game. They controlled it better than we did. Didn't have loads of the ball, but you just had this feeling that they were in control from the moment that they scored the equaliser. So yeah, that'll be an issue. And obviously that middle ground is the area that a lot of people will be a bit concerned about, because you would look at Croatia's and say it's probably stronger than England's, where we're probably going to line up with a pretty inexperienced, certainly in terms of major tournaments, midfield. I don't think Henderson will make this one personally, this Croatia game.
No.
But one thing to consider, I did look back at the Nations League game since, obviously, the one that England won 2-1. It's frightening, the England 11. So Modric and Brozovic started in the sort of axis for Croatia, and that will be the case again. The England midfield three that day was Eric Dyer, Fabian Delph, and Ross Barkley.
You've ruined my quiz question. I had that down. I was going to ask it as a surprise quiz question, and you've ruined it.
And then there's an extra that England were losing at that point. They made changes, and the two players they brought on were Jesse Lingard and Dele Alli. So all five midfielders that played that game are not in the squad. And we won that game. So I'm not sure what point I'm making, but they are beatable. Like, we do have the quality to beat them in that midfield area, especially as Modric is aged a little bit more, obviously, as is natural. But yeah, I do think we shouldn't be too worried, but at the same time, obviously respecting the talent that they have in that area.
Yeah, I should apologise to video watchers of this podcast at this point, as I didn't realise that my drink had powder in it, and I had powder all over my face for about 10 minutes of the show there. So apologies to anyone that is watching via YouTube. Jonathan, do you think that Nations League win banished the ghosts in some way? Because it was actually only a few months later as well.
Yes and no. I mean, it's a Nations League as opposed to a World Cup semi-final. We're
different pressures. We're
not talking like with like. And England, to be honest, they got away with it in that game. I suppose you could say Croatia got away with it a bit in the World Cup semi. And I guess this game is at Wembley, so the fact that game was at Wembley, you can't sort of write it off and go, well, if it's at home, it's a different situation. But I think there is a big difference between Croatia then and Croatia now. When four of the players who start the World Cup final for Croatia don't play for them anymore. Modric, I think, is beginning to creak a little bit. I think there's a bit of tension in the squad with as the old guard are phased out and new players come in, so Chileta Carr coming in for Lovren, I think, has caused a little bit of friction. Vasiliko's been injured for a lot of the last 3 years, and I think is nothing like the player he was then. Certainly, I mean, yeah, we've all learned our lesson about saying Croatians are going to be tired, not going to be able to run as much, but Vasiliko really can't run as much. We have seen that he can't do it. So the way Croatia got back into that semi-final was Vasiliko pushing up from right back, and then England getting overmanned in midfield, and Henderson doing these sort of shuttles across the pitch, as the ball kind of flew back and forth over his head. And I think that's my biggest criticism of Southgate's reign, is that he didn't pull back Sterling or take Sterling off to put another midfielder pretty quickly when that began to happen, because you could see it coming. So my sense of this group, and obviously this could look incredibly stupid by Monday, but my sense is that Croatia are probably a little bit short, and Scotland and Czech Republic a little bit long, and England are very short, I think, purely because the patriotic pound sort of necessarily depresses the odds.
Yeah, and the build-up for Croatia, a 1-1 draw with Armenia, Martin, and a 1-0 defeat to Belgium. No shame in losing to the Belgians. 8 players have started both games, but it is that attack that's their problem now. No, Mandzukic is retired from international football. Hasn't really been replaced, has he?
No. You look at the players that haven't really been able to sort of step up their club form to international, and it's common. And you look at, again, this could be a sort of curse, but you look at Kramaric being one of those who's been very, very good for Hoffenheim over the last 2-3 seasons, but hasn't really been able to translate that to Croatia and nail down that spot. So it'll be between him and Bruno Petkovic, probably. Even Ivan Perisic has played centrally for them. That's sort of the issues that they've had. And then the other sort of debates are whether, I think it'll be Rebic, like you say, on the right ahead of Brekalo, who's a good young player. He's one to watch. And then it's Kovacic and Vlasic, the sort of competition in midfield. And I imagine they'll go for Kovacic in this one just because he's more defensive. Vlasic is a really talented player. Obviously, you might recognise his name from his time at Everton, but he never really got a chance. And I think that's not bitten them, but I think they did let him go early. And it might only be the Russian league, but he is the best player in the Russian league by a bit of a distance, really. So he's certainly one to watch, but I think he'll play the sort of games against Croatia or Czech Republic more likely.
Right, and you've got England and Croatia combined 11 for us, Martin. I should say I've not seen this at this point, so I have no clue what it's going to be. I presume Jonathan hasn't either, so this will be a nice surprise. Yeah,
so we obviously, it is England dominated. I think that's fair. It's what you'd expect. So there are 9 England players, as many as 9. So we went through the top-rated England 11 in last week's show. So the back 5 is the same from that. So it's Sam Johnston in goal ahead of Pickford based on league ratings last season. Then Trippier, Stones. It is Maguire, but obviously now that he's been sort of effectively ruled out, it would actually be Domagoj Vida who takes that second spot over the likes of Mings, Stones, even Chileta Carr as well. So it would be 3 if Maguire is out, as looks to be the case. Luke Shaw at left back. And then the 2 Croatia players are the ones we've talked about. They are Modric and Brozovic in that sort of holding midfield with Mount ahead of them. So you've got probably 3 Croatia players in it now that sort of Maguire's ruled himself out. So you would look at England being the favourites, and they are, and they rightly are, in my opinion. But I do think they're short, like Jonathan says. I do think there's potential value in Croatia, maybe even in a sort of double chance. England don't traditionally start tournaments convincingly, so and at the same time, there's a bit more leeway in terms of we don't have to win this game. Obviously, we'll go out to win it, but a draw wouldn't be the end of the world for sure. So yeah, I think it could be I don't see it being a convincing win either way. I think it will be a very tight game.
Yeah, I can see it being a draw personally as well. If I had to predict, I think that's what I'd go with. Right, it's crunch time, Jonathan. You're done in your waistcoat. You're going to pick your England 11 with your formation that you think should line up on Sunday. So that's probably no Harry Maguire, because we've just found out that he's not going to be available to be on the bench until the Czech Republic game. Okay,
Pickford, any right back you want, but let's say Walker, because I think he's probably the man in possession. Stones, White, Chilwell, but it's a 51-49 call. Phillips, Rice, Mount, Foden, Kane. Sancho.
It's not easy. It's not easy at all.
Well, my worry about Sancho, I think Sancho of the three sort of runners. So I think the way it should be is Kane plus a creator plus a runner for one other. So that means you're picking Foden or Grealish on the left, and then Sterling, Rashford, or Sancho on the right. Sterling obviously is a man in possession, so I've got a suspicion Southgate will go with him.
Same.
Sancho is more naturally right side. He's been brilliant for him the last couple of months. The one slight reservation I have is I think he probably needs an overlapping fullback to get the best out of him. And my guess would be that Chil will be far more attacking than Walker, which maybe is an argument to play Shaw to tuck in slightly and to play Reece James or probably Kieran Trippier on the right to be more attacking. But yeah, those are elements of fine tuning. So that's my one reservation with having Sancho there. But.
I mean, I think we can all pick these 11s, but then Gareth Southgate will have something completely different in mind to us. Martin, get your waistcoat on as well then.
So yeah, it's very similar not too similar at the back actually. Jordan Pickford in goal. I would go Walker right back just about, but exactly the same as Jonathan. I wouldn't be bothered really at between the three. John Stones, I would stick to a back four. John Stones right back. I would put faith in Tyrone Mings personally. I just think the balance is there, and he's got that leadership. I would worry about White and Stones in terms of who's going to really step up. I would just about give it to Shaw. I think he was one of the only players who sort of looked decent enough against Romania, and obviously should be that little bit sharper than Chilwell perhaps. Same midfield as Jonathan, but I would actually probably I've talked myself out of last week's lineup, and I would probably go for a 4-2-3-1 and push Mount into the 10. Just because I think he can then provide that running threat in behind. His movement's really, really intelligent. So I think that then has convinced me to allow myself to play Phil Foden and Jack Grealish on the wings as Jonathan hangs his head in shame. But yeah, I do think there's enough movement there if you push Mount further forward. I might be wrong. I just find it difficult to leave out Grealish after those two performances where he was quite clearly England's sort of brightest player without even being close to his best.
So why don't we bring in Nigel Spink and Gordon Cowans as well? I mean, Peter Whiff, just pack it with other players.
They're not available. They didn't make this final squad. It was a joke. But yeah, no, and obviously Harry Kane up front. So yeah, I just can't leave out Grealish or Foden, and I'm probably completely wrong, but I just can't bring myself to do it.
I mean, with the goalkeepers, I wouldn't actually say no to Nigel Spink coming in. he's used to coming on last minute as well, Jonathan, like as a last minute call up. So yeah, I think.
Oh, 6 minutes into the 82 final, wasn't it?
Yeah. He obviously didn't know much about it, and then he suddenly finds himself playing against Bayern Munich in 1982. But I don't want to be that Villa fan that goes on about 1982 all the time.
You know the great story. I won't say who it was, but there was a leading football journalist, not me, a leading football journalist. Who found himself locked in Villa Park one night. He was doing his follow-up piece, just taking too long. There's nobody about, and he's sort of trying the doors, and they're all locked. And he's panicking, thinking, "I'm just going to be locked in here all night." Tries to ring the press officer, no answer. And there's a keypad at the door, and he thinks, "I bet it's 1982."
No,
enough. 1982.
I've got to say, there has been a few Wi-Fi passwords knocking around the Villa Park that have had 1982 in them as well. So actually, I can believe it. Jonathan, do you want to pick apart Martin's team even more before we do mine?
I just think you need somebody to run beyond Kane. And talking about the difference between a 4-3-3 and a 4-2-3-1, we're talking 2-5 yards in difference in Mount's positioning. Yeah, my central three, Phillips is sitting deepest, Rice is slightly advancing to the right, and Mount is slightly advancing to the left. It's that sort of very Dutch style 4-3-3 come 4-2-3-1. So I don't think shape-wise is a huge difference, but I just think you need somebody to make runs beyond Kane. Otherwise, you're not getting the best out of one of Kane's best assets.
I think you'll like mine. I think there's a nice balance to my side. 4-2-3-1 as well. So I've got Pickford in goal, Kieran Trippier at right back because I love him, John Stones and Mings at centre back, Shaw at left back, Rice and Bellingham as the two in front of the back four, and then I've gone Sancho, Mount, Grealish behind Kane. So I've got a runner, although I don't think he's the best runner out of the three, but there is a runner in there. But I've done about 100 podcasts this week and I've had a different 11 on every single one, so probably don't listen to what I say.
No, I mean structurally, that's not dissimilar to my sensible lineup rather than Martin's crazy lineup. And personnel-wise, I quite happy, toss of a coin. And I mean, Bellingham is obviously a risk because he's a kid, but he's a kid who's playing really, really well. As you get older, you become more cautious. So that's why I'm keeping Phillips in there. But I'm not totally averse to your lineup. I think it's less ridiculous than Martin's.
That's good. That's all I wanted to hear. I mean, Gareth Southgate will probably take it quite cautiously on Sunday, I'm going to imagine. Right, Martin, it's time now for the bet builder section. So you've come up with a variety of things that can happen in a game and turned it into one bet that people can back with Bet Victor. Off you go.
Yeah, so we're obviously looking at the England-Croatia game still. I've got four tips into one game sort of ACCA, so to speak, which is what the ever increasing popularity of bet builders is. So I've got both teams to score as one of my tips. The reasoning: England have scored in 19 of their last 20 matches on home soil. Croatia have scored in 8 of their 9 competitive internationals this season, but also they've only kept 2 clean sheets in that time against Cyprus and Malta. So I would back England to score, but I do think Croatia will score as well. Both teams have also scored in England's last 5 major tournament openers. So that's the first tip. I've got Kane to score, which isn't particularly groundbreaking. Obviously approaches the tournament off the back of another Golden Boot award. Scored 15 in his last 19 competitive internationals. And he did score the winner in the last meeting between the teams as well. And I've got 2 players to be carded, both Croatia, just because it is so hard to predict that England lineup. And you do need to bank on players that you sort of are pretty sure are going to be in the starting 11. So I've got Brozovic and Cheleta to both be carded. So Brozovic has been booked in 3 of his last 4 competitive international starts this season. He was booked in the last meeting between the teams, got 7 yellows for Inter this season, so he is used to being in the referee's notebook. And Cheleta booked in 3 of 5 competitive internationals this season. Most bookings of any Croatian in Europe's top 5 leagues this season, with 8, which is a lot for a centre-back. So yeah, those are my tips, 4 tips there. So both teams to score, Harry Kane to score anytime, and Brozovic and Cheleta to be carded. That original price at Bet Victor is 25 to 1, but they have boosted it for us to 35 to 1. So a decent boost there. So yeah, one to consider. We'll obviously have the link in the description of this video, and it will go out on socials as well. We've got our own sort of WhoScored landing page for our tips on this podcast and our boosts. So head there, look into the description of this video, and you can have a little punt on that if you like. Obviously, gamble responsibly.
I'm delighted to be joined again by Bet Victor's Sam Boswell to look at all the key markets ahead of Euro 2020. Sam, great to have you on. Let's start with those free bets because that's what most people are going to care about.
That's the bit people want to hear from me, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Big well done to last time out. We had a couple of winners there. We're going to do it again. We've got 2 £25 bets to give away to listeners of the show. All you need to do is answer the following question. Yet again, just get into the comments on the YouTube page. It's as simple as that. Terms and conditions do apply. And as ever, we'd encourage people to gamble responsibly. The all-important question is as follows. Who scored the opening goal for England in their eventual World Cup semi-final defeat to Croatia in 2018? Pretty much one of the most iconic moments of my life. I suspect most of you will remember who it was. All went downhill after that, of course. But who scored the opening goal for England, their eventual World Cup semi-final defeat to Croatia in 2018? That's the question. Best of luck to everyone entering. And as I said, those terms and conditions do apply.
Yeah, and as ever, we do encourage people to bet responsibly. But personally, I'm going to encourage people to bet early as well, because I got caught out last week, Sam. I gave the France to win the Euros and Lukaku 55 to 1 tip basically to everyone that I knew. They all got the 55 to 1. And then when I came to do it, the odds had dropped. Do you want to just explain that a little bit? It was a popular bet, wasn't it?
I mean, popular bet would be an understatement. These specials throughout the tournament, we see, I think it depends on the special. Some really capture the betting public's imagination and those watching these videos, and others, they tend to sort of just get left alone. But I must say that has been, in the time I've worked for Bet Victor and we put football specials out, the response was remarkable. People all wanted to get stuck in. I think Lukaku's record as a goal scorer speaks for itself. And France have been a really strong suggestion to win the tournament outright. You know, we've seen a lot of interest in Kante for player of the tournament. And when you start seeing a lot of side bets mount up, they're obviously going to be natural candidates to win the outright tournament. And it looks like a really interesting bet. So well done, those of you that got on the prices. Do keep your eyes peeled for these boosts and get stuck in early doors if you want to get involved, because you can't necessarily always leave the prices forever. But yeah, well done if you're on at a pretty price.
Yeah, there's some good boosts coming up later on in the show as well that we're going to talk over. Let's look at England, Croatia, then the big one on Sunday. What kind of markets are we looking at for that? What have been the popular bets so far?
Well, so far, we're recording this a little bit ahead of time, but there has been early interest in quite tight scorelines. So you're looking at correct scores of 1-0 England, 0-0 actually, weirdly, has seen a bit of support. The most significant move is a pretty obvious one, though, is Harry Kane to score. He's always going to be popular, isn't he? He's in the Golden Boot running, we hope, from an England perspective as well. But I've just had a little click around at some of the bet builders. You've got England to win, Harry Kane to score one or more goals in there. And then if you threw in both teams over 0.5 cards, I've had a little look at the referee actually. And I've got to say, I think people are going to get stuck in on the card betting. It's 12-5, that particular bet. Chelsea fans will know him well from the 2 legs he refereed for them this season in their Champions League campaign against Atletico. I think he's going to definitely get the cards out. I think this could be one for people to get involved. And while we're touching on the England game, I must just give a mention to a brand new feature that has launched on our site. So if you head to the match market for any game at the Euros, but I'm using England specifically at the moment because that's what we're talking about, we've got our new player performance tab just next to the bet builder and before the goal scorers, and your usual markets that people love that have been really keen to see on the site: shots on target, shots outside the box, assists, offsides, tackles, are all there for you to get stuck into. It's a brand new feature. We're really pleased that it's out in time for the Euros, and plenty of interest. I quite like the look myself of Harry Kane, 1 or more offsides at 4-6, but I'm hoping he can find the net instead.
Is that the things like shots, Harry Kane shots on target, I imagine would be a good one, because he likes to lash a shot away from distance and get his shot numbers up, doesn't he? I reckon that would be a good one.
Yeah, he's a little bit short, just having a look for my taste at 2 shots on target, 40-85 at the moment. But like I say, you've got all the usual suspects in there. Grealish, I must confess, if I play these markets myself, I like to wait for the team news because Grealish would catch my attention. So we're expecting to see a lot of business once that team sheet's out and we finally know who Gareth Southgate is going to pick to play in which positions, because I still have absolutely no idea what we're going to see.
Talk to us about the markets and the bets that have been popular going into the weekend.
Yeah, well, everyone's starting to get their match day accas on, X to beat Y, that kind of thing. And I'll just point out a couple of the shorter prices. Spain to beat Sweden on Monday night. It should be a cracking game, shouldn't it? What a great way to spend Monday evening watching a Spanish side that I still can't work out who's going to play where for them and who's going to start. I know there's plenty of interest in Fernan Torres as well, but they're 9-20 at time of recording, which is a short price, but there seem to be a bit of an anchor leg. And I think we're going to see a bit of support for the Scots. Obviously, they got the 2:00 Monday game. I don't think anyone will be doing much work in Scotland come Monday afternoon. They're 15-8 to get the win over the Czech Republic, but be interesting to see. They're going to have the pressure, obviously, of knowing the England-Croatia result, which both sides are going to be probably keeping a little bit of an eye on. But yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. And I think Poland as well will make up a bit of an acca on the Monday to get the better of Slovakia. Plenty of people pinning their hopes on Robert Lewandowski to deliver for the Poles in that particular game. But yeah, what a great kind of opening set of games we've got to get stuck into. And there's loads of interest. You'll find all the markets over at betvictor.com. And as ever, we'd encourage people to bet responsibly and really enjoy this tournament. Now it's finally here.
Yeah, great to talk to you, Sam. Thanks ever so much for taking us through that. Really, really appreciate it.
No problem. Best of luck to all those entering the competition as well.
Right, so we've handpicked some of the other big group games coming up in the next few days. And the first one we're going to talk about, chaps, is Spain v Sweden on Monday night. Martin, COVID outbreaks all over the place in the Spain squad. Some real worries going into this unique tournament for them.
Yeah, obviously Sergio Busquets is one of those to have contracted the virus, and he was due to captain the team in Sergio Ramos's absence, so that's a blow, but not a massive one where you've got Rodri there who can stand in, and Spain do have good options in midfield. And the other one is Diego Llorente, I think, from the Leeds centre-back, who I don't think was due to start anyway. I think it would probably be Pau Torres and Laporte, but it could be Eric Garcia and Laporte to sort of rekindle that Man City partnership. Not that they've played often together, but yeah. So that's a blow in terms of their preparations, but it could be worse. I'd maybe worry for Sweden's a little bit more. They're without Dejan Kulusevski, who's had a tough season at Juventus after a big money move, not been able to replicate his form from his loan spell at Parma the season before. But he is a threat for them, and they're without Ibrahimovic from the start of the tournament. So I was kind of looking forward to seeing their sort of young players, certainly in attack, coming through. They're also without Matthias Svanberg, who's a young option in midfield to sort of step into 89-year-old Seb Larsson's shoes if he can't play every game. They're without two young players who were probably two of the more sort of interesting to watch, but they do still have Alexander Isak as well. And Jordan Larsson, who's son of Henrik, of course, he's had a very good season at Spartak. So hopefully we'll get to see at least one of those. So not a straightforward game for Spain, but my worry with Sweden is always that I just don't see an upset in them. I think they can frustrate teams, but I certainly don't think they can beat a Spain personally. They might be able to keep the score down, but I do fancy Spain.
Does anyone know a time when there was an international tournament without Seb Larsson in? Does anyone know that the last time? I don't know the answer. I'm just wondering. I thought Jonathan might have in some of his notes. I could have a stab at it, but I'm feeling like it might even be like
2008.
I was going to say 2000, but that's wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, that's definitely wrong.
When did he come through? He feels like he came through Arsenal a very, very long time.
Well, I mean, he couldn't finish the game for Sunderland. How long ago was that?
Sunderland, yeah.
7 or 8 years ago.
He was playing for Birmingham in like 2010.
But still starts regularly for Sweden, which is a worry. I haven't tracked his last few years, but I think he's 37 at least, 36, 37. So you'd worry about that sort of engine room because they are aging in there. I think Albin Ekdal may well partner him. He's sort of early 30s, I believe. You'd worry about that area of the pitch.
A lot of ageism in this show.
I'm
not sure I'm happy about that. I mean, it is rare that an international football is older than me nowadays, so that is a nice thing to hear. Jonathan, Spain, we kind of praised Enrique last week for the way he's gone about picking his squad, only naming 24 players, and then they've obviously had a COVID outbreak. That doesn't look too clever now. What are we thinking about them? I really don't know what to expect with them. You always look at Spain and feel like you know about them, but I look at them in this tournament and think, I'm not sure what you are, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're at a spell, not just the national team, but Spanish football in general, where having been, after the Spanish league had been dominant in European competition for well over a decade, suddenly they've fallen behind, and it seems to happen really quickly.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Villarreal have won the Europa League this season, so it's not a complete disaster. But in terms of Champions League level, no semi-finalists in either of the last two seasons, which is the first time, I think, since 2007 that's been the case. And I think, essentially, Spanish football's just got slow. And I think partly that's to do with the extraordinary wealth of Real Madrid and Barcelona comparative to other Spanish clubs. So there is a level of complacency there. But I think they've been badly exposed, particularly by English and German teams, who I think always look more aggressive, more physical. I even think Italian teams are looking more aggressive and more physical.
Yeah, they look good.
So I think there is a need for a rethink in Spanish football, just to not to chuck away everything they've done over the last 15 years, but just to look at how the game's changed and look at how they can move on. And that's the natural cycle of things. You develop a new way of playing, you become incredibly successful at it, and then others begin to look at how they challenge that, and you don't change because it's really successful. So why would you change? And then you fall behind, and then the cycle begins again. So they're just at that down point of the cycle. I think what we've seen with Luis Enrique is he's very aware of that. He was very aware of that at Barcelona. So his Barcelona side, although it had the incredibly gifted front three, he was trying to make them more direct. It wasn't the same game that Guardiola had been playing. I think he's trying to do that with the national team. I think that's why he's been so single-minded in saying, I don't want to take Sergio Ramos just to kind of keep some people in the Madrid press happy. This is my team. This is how we're doing things. The COVID outbreak, I mean, yes, it looks as if by restricting himself by not having those two additional players, that it's a bad idea. But equally, 24 players should be enough. You can't be going into a tournament thinking, I better pick everybody I can just in case we get COVID. That's no good for anybody. So, obviously it's complicated things. This is a very young side. I think you'd probably say that it's building towards the World Cup or maybe even the next Euros, and that possibly gives them some wiggle room or some excuse. But at the same time, when I mapped out the tournament, I had them reaching the final. So
Really?
Yeah, just because I just don't think the draw's that hard. I think this group is relatively straightforward. I think I had them beating Italy in the semi. Would that be true? I think their half of the draw is significantly easier than the other half, and so I don't think they have to be that good to go quite deep.
Well, let's look
and they beat Germany. They beat Germany 6-0. That's a result that will resonate and continue to resonate.
Yeah, not a bad result, that, is it? Beating Germany 6-0. You'd be quite happy with that. Let's look at Germany then now. They're coming up against France. In the group of death, I would call it, Martin. It's a really, really tough group. That Germany looked very good in the last friendly, but it was against Latvia on Monday. What are we thinking of Germany going into this tournament? I always just assume they're probably going to win it.
Yeah, I've tossed and turned about Germany, and I think Jogi Löw has too. They've moved to a back three in their last friendly against Latvia, which you say they were excellent in that game. Obviously, it is Latvia, but England played Romania and really, really struggled. But yeah, some of the link up in that game was very, very impressive. The goals were very, very impressive. So that will be a morale boost. And the key decision he made in that game, I think, was to move Joshua Kimmich to right wing back. Obviously, he's arguably their best midfielder, but he's also comfortably their best right back, or their best option there. Obviously, if you lose Kimmich from the midfield, you're still going to bring in Goretzka, his clubmate Goretzka, probably to that midfield, and there's other options as well. So you've got Gundogan and Goretzka will probably start there with Müller just ahead, with Kimmich at right back, which doesn't sound bad, does it? No. So yeah, I personally think that's the right call. As much as you want to see the best players playing in their best positions for this Germany squad, I think Jogi Löw has made the right call there, and maybe a bit belatedly, but yeah, they did look really good in that game. So they come into, and I've wobbled a bit on France as well. So I think this is a really tough game to call, and obviously it is the sort of marquee game of the round, arguably of the group stage, I'd say.
Yeah, bloody Germany. They lose Philipp Lahm and they just replace him with Kimmich, just an instant great replacement. Seems very, very typical of the German national team. Jonathan, France favourites. We waxed lyrical about them on last week's podcast. Actually, it might not have even been his podcast. It might have been another podcast I did, but everyone is waxing lyrical about France. But they're now going into the tournament with some, not even concerns, some disarray in the camp, because certain players aren't happy that certain players won't pass them the ball. And there does always seem to be something going on in the French camp with egos.
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of spent 2 years saying France will win this tournament, and then suddenly in the last 4 days, I've started to ask myself what might stop them winning the tournament. And once you start to look, you suddenly find loads of reasons. So let's start with Benzema. Just bringing him in suggests something is up. Why is Deschamps so keen to bring in a bloke he dropped 3 years ago successfully? Why does he want him back? I know he's been excellent in that time, but he wasn't dropped for form. He was dropped for off-field issues, which is still not resolved. I mean, that court case is in October. And if I were Olivier Giroud, I'd be feeling pretty miffed. I mean, it seems to be his lot in life that he plays really well, and then his manager goes, "Actually, we're going to go for this more glamorous bloke. Sorry, Olivier, you can have the last 10 minutes." So I think that is an issue, and I think although Benzema is obviously a very rounded player and offers a lot, and he's a better player than Giroud. Giroud's play with his back to goal, his unselfishness was a key to that World Cup win, and I think he got the best out of Griezmann, who has not had an easy season. I mean, we're not even sure Benzema's going to be fit for this game, so there's a question mark there. But then there's this story that Mbappe isn't passing to Giroud, which, I mean, if I was coaching 7-year-olds and they did that, I'd be giving them my subs back and telling them to go home. To do it at this level is just pathetic. I mean, it says something. I was about to use a phrase that the communist regime in the Soviet Union used a lot about football clubs. Of the educational work at the club needs to develop, which basically meant somebody was trying to defect. I don't think anybody's trying to defect away from France, but PSG have got to sort out this celebrity culture, because it's just toxic. And if that is true, then it's really pathetic. And then you look at the back four. Varane's had a disappointing season, and I have to say, I've never rated Kimpembe. I always think when I see PSG, he's somebody that a good side can get at. So that doesn't really convince me. The fullbacks don't get forward. They're hopeless. Whoever thought France were going to win this thing? It's N'Golo Kante and absolutely nobody else. Clearly, I don't really mean that, but I think there are doubts, there are question marks. And yeah, the group is unforgiving. You know, particularly if Hungary can take a point off somebody, which in their own stadium, those first two games against Portugal and France. I mean, look, Hungary were terrible against Ireland. If you watch that game, they were absolutely atrocious. But home crowd, you know, unbeaten in I think 11 games now. Hungary. There's certainly a chance they can nick a point with somebody. If that does happen, there's massive jeopardy, and it becomes an even more fascinating group.
Yes, it's just very, very bizarre, especially as I think Benzema will probably retire from international football after this tournament, so it just doesn't really feel worth all the strain that it's causing to me. Martin, does Benzema make the combined France and Germany 11?
Yeah, he does make the team. Obviously, as Jonathan said, he's had an excellent season. Probably one of his best in a Real Madrid shirt, if not his best. Really stepped up since Ronaldo left. So he does make it into the 11, but there is the caveat that he's a doubt for this game with that. Was it a dead leg that he picked up against Bulgaria? Was it in the friendly? So yeah, he's a doubt. But when you look at the team on paper, and I know Jonathan loves to use league ratings to combine these 11s, but when you do look at the team on paper, you do start to see that Germany actually they're probably being overlooked, really.
But the doubt with Germany is not the players; it's the manager.
Yeah. No, of course.
They're players. And, you know, when you were talking about the midfield before, you weren't even talking about Toni Kroos. There was a significant possibility Toni Kroos doesn't get in this side, which is preposterous.
No, yeah. But well, he does get in.
They're probably going to have to make a choice. They're probably picking 3 out of Müller, Gnabry, Sané, and Havertz, which is again ludicrous depth.
Yeah, well, our lineup, Kroos does make it, I should say. So we've got it as a 4-3-1-2, and there's another sort of surprising goal, but not really a surprise when you consider it's actually Mike Maignan, who's just moved to AC Milan. He actually kept the most clean sheets of any goalkeeper in Europe's top 5 leagues, as Lille won Ligue 1, had an outstanding season. So he, on sort of form on league rating, he would get in over Lloris and even over Neuer, who himself was excellent in the Champions League, but not quite so good in the Bundesliga this season. So the back four is Kimmich at right back, Hummels, Gersons is the left back, more of a left wing back, obviously, but he's the left back. And it's actually Kurt Zouma takes the final spot in terms of form rating. And again, I think he did actually have a very good season for Chelsea. He was one of those who was sort of unlucky to sort of get dropped by Tuchel, even though that proved to be a good decision to bring in Rudiger, who he actually beats to this lineup. Just the ratings are incredibly tight. So it's Zouma in this 11, Kroos in front of them with Goretzka, Gundogan either side, and then Thomas Müller behind Benzema and Mbappe, so ahead of Griezmann. As Jonathan says, he probably improved a little bit from his first season at Barcelona, but yeah, still not at the levels that we would expect.
Not to get into our WhoScored 11. Nice little 11, that, Jonathan. Yeah,
I'd happily take it. I mean, the problem, Germany is a really, I think it's a fascinating case study that I think we've seen the big Western European nations. I think you can now include England in this. They've sort of industrialised youth production, and so you see the incredible strength in depth that France, Germany, England, and maybe not right now, but certainly over the last sort of 10 years or so, Spain, and perhaps just beginning to emerge Italy have, because they've put loads of cash in this and know how to do it. And so, you know, as in everything, if you put money in something, you develop it properly, you have a huge advantage. But Germany's problem is, I think they lack a holding midfielder, that they could end up playing Gundogan as a holding midfielder, which, look for the Champions League final for the potential problems with that. And as I'm pretty sure it was this podcast last week, and if not, just Google me, because I've said it many other places. I do not trust Jogi Löw at all, and I think he got away with it in 2014, but I don't really think he's managed this team well since 2010.
Interesting. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. Really, real one to look forward to, that France v Germany. That is the standout fixture of round one, as Martin says. One for the legacy Edge of the Box podcast subscribers now. We've got the Just a Minute section is back. We're going to go over 8 more round one games now. We'll start with you, Jonathan, and we'll talk about Wales against Switzerland.
I think this tournament's going to be much, much harder for Wales than 5 years ago. I think partly there was a euphoria of it being a new experience after so long of not qualifying. I also think this squad's just not as gifted. Obviously, all the problems with the management, with Ryan Giggs not being there. It still seems unclear as to whether they'll start with Kiefer Moore as a centre forward or whether they'll go with Harry Wilson as a false 9. I think in this game, there's an argument for Kiefer Moore. Maybe the other 2 games in the group, when they come up against more physically imposing centre-backs, you don't do that. Gareth Bale obviously is the key player. Daniel James on the other side, so there is great pace going forward. I think this game against what's probably going to be a back 3, the pace of James and Bale getting in behind the wing backs could be key. Aaron Ramsey hasn't played a huge amount of football, but he's obviously essential to the centre of the midfield. I've rambled on slightly too long there. The big thing for the Swiss, I think, is that 4 of their players have barely played this season, which might be a good thing that they're fresh. So if Wales are going to do anything, I think they've got to get a result here.
First game, absolutely massive. I have got a stopwatch in front of me now, Martin, so I'm going to be very strict for podcast purposes now. Your 1 minute to talk about Denmark and Finland starts now.
A 1-1 draw with Germany and a 2-0 win over Bosnia has only strengthened the opinions of many that Denmark are a force to be reckoned with this summer. Kasper Dolberg got the nod to start over Jonas Wind up front against the latter, and that choice is perhaps the biggest selection dilemma for Kasper Hjulmand. It's ironic that the one thing that Denmark lack is a strong finisher, and that's the one thing that Finland possess. But Teemu Pukki's fitness will be a real concern. He made his first appearance from the bench in their final friendly against Estonia following an ankle injury. They lost that game 1-0 to follow up a 2-0 defeat to Sweden, so it's been a bit of a morale-damaging exercise in the build-up for Finland. Denmark are likely to line up in a 4-3-3, while Finland will probably look to counter in a 3-5-2, knowing that the Danes aren't really at their best when they're forced to dictate possession. It's difficult to look past the hosts regardless, with this game being played in Copenhagen, but a rout is unlikely, so I'd go for a 1 or 2-0 Denmark win.
Well, it's just a minute, Martin, not just the 52 seconds, but well done. You've come in under the time. So
I made up for Jonathan's overrun.
Yeah, that's nice. Jonathan, Belgium against Russia.
Well, you look at this Russia squad and you sort of think, oh, God, where are all the old favourites? There's no Akinfeev, neither Berezitsky twin, no Ignashevich. And you sort of feel a bit bereft. And then thank God there's Yuri Zhirkov, age 37, still somehow getting a game at fullback, which makes no sense at all. I think they've actually really struggled to move on from that base. I think it was so solid for so long. That is an issue for them. And recent results have not been good. They've never beaten Belgium, played them 7 times since the collapse of the Soviet Union, drawn 2, lost 5. And Belgium beat the Soviet Union in that famous quarterfinal in '86 and destroyed the great Lobanovsky dream and was probably the best Soviet team. All their goal threat is Artem Dzyuba, who is big and lumbering and slow and lovable in many ways, but probably the perfect opposition for Belgium, because the big doubt for me about Belgium is a lack of pace and quality in the back 3 with Vertonghen and Alderweireld, who are slow, either side of Denier, who is not as good as Vincent Kompany.
Lovely stuff. Austria against North Macedonia, Martin. Good luck with this one.
Austria followed up their 1-0 defeat to England with a 0-0 draw against Slovakia, so don't enter this tournament in much confidence at all. The relatively unpopular Franco Foda has chopped and changed his lineup in both games. But the one real positive has been the return of the likes of Konrad Laimer and Julian Baumgartlinger, who've basically missed the entire Bundesliga season through injury. Laimer's probably the one that's likely to start, and I think he's one of their key players. Getting the best out of David Alaba remains a real problem, and rather than calling on his superior quality, the soon-to-be Real Madrid man is generally used and relied upon for his versatility to plug gaps, which is a problem. The Austrian Peter Crouch, Sasha Kalajic is one to watch, but a lack of service is a worry. By contrast, North Macedonia enjoyed a morale-boosting 4-0 win over Kazakhstan in their last warm-up match and are now unbeaten in 4. Key man Enis Bardi should be available, having missed their friendly matches after testing positive for COVID. And at full strength, the Debutants could cause an upset here, even if only earning a draw, in my opinion.
Well done, Martin. Very well done for that one. A tough one to talk about and some niche pronunciations as well. So I'll give you full credit for that. Jonathan, Netherlands v Ukraine.
Well, I'm really excited by Ukraine. I think Ukraine could be the the sort of team who do significantly better than people expect. They had a terrible Euros 5 years ago, lost every game. Andriy Shevchenko has become coach since then. He's led them to promotion to Nations League Group A. They qualified unbeaten in a group with Portugal. I really like the look at their midfield. So it'll be Stepanienko or Sidorchuk at the back of midfield. Both of them very experienced, both of them in their early 30s. Then you've got Malinovsky, who had a fantastic end of the season for Atalanta. 6 goals, 9 assists in his last 11 games. Zinchenko, who we know is a left back, but plays in midfield and has that quality. So that three, I think, is really good. Question whether he'll get enough goals, but Yaremchuk has scored 40 goals over the last 2 seasons for Ghent. And they do have Yarmolenko coming off the flank, assuming he's fit, which he may not be. The Dutch, frankly, are shambles under Frank de Boer. Don't fancy them at all. No Van der Vaart, no Van der Beek. And so I think they might lose this one.
Lovely. Bang on a minute. Well done, Jonathan. Martin, John McGinn, Scotland against Czech Republic.
Scotland will line up in their usual 3-5-2 formation that has already got the better of the Czech Republic twice in the Nations League this season. Scott McTominay has been moved back into midfield in recent times at the expense of an attacking threat in Ryan Christie, and the absence of Manchester United man has left a hole at the back that may well be the only dilemma for Steve Clarke. Jack Hendry, Liam Cooper and Declan Gallagher are vying for that spot, with the former perhaps gaining an advantage by scoring in the 2-2 draw against the Netherlands. When the squad was depleted by COVID concerns, John Fleck has returned to training, but he's unlikely to play, with the usual suspects returning to earn a somewhat unconvincing 1-0 win over Luxembourg. The Czechs were dealt a blow by the injury to Lucas Provald out of the squad and suffered a humbling 4-0 defeat to Italy in preparation for the tournament. Coach Jaroslav Silhavi rang the changes and should stick with the 4-2-3-1 formation that bounced back with a 3-1 win over Albania, with Thomas Kalas taking the spot alongside Andrei Chilutska at the back. With very little to choose between the sides, this is probably a must-win game for both in the battle for what most will expect to be third.
I'm calling you. You're over to
fair enough. Yeah, I was right about to finish, but that's fair.
No, well, it didn't feel like it, so I called it. Nice little mention for Thomas Kalas there.
It's fair. I'm all right with it.
Jonathan, your last one is Poland versus Slovakia.
Yeah, a lot of controversy in Poland about the appointment of Paulo Sousa to be their coach. He's been around the block. He's been at Basel. He's been at Fiorentina. I personally, every time I've met him, he seems incredibly engaging and intelligent, and I want to believe he's a good coach. I'm not sure he's a good fit for Poland, though. Poland always strike me as being a slightly big, lumbering side, and I don't think that suits his insistence on the back three. I would worry a lot about the way the wing-backs push forward, given how little pace there is in that defence. And they've now got problems up front. That Lewandowski obviously will play, but Piontek and Milik are both out. So the back three had liberated Zielinski to sort of have a free role behind Lewandowski and one other forward. He's now effectively playing alongside Klich. So it's 2 behind Lewandowski up front. I think that does cost them. Slovakia, it's all about Hamšík. The 2 games he didn't play earlier this year, they only drew against Cyprus and against Malta. They are unbeaten in 5, but 4 of those have been drawn. And to be honest, they haven't been anybody good. So I suspect it's Hamšík against Lewandowski and not much else.
Lovely, Jonathan. Well done. That's you done for the Just a Minute section. But Martin, you've got one more game to talk about. Your favourite team, Hungary against Portugal.
Yeah, starman Dominik Szoboszlai's absence through injury was certainly felt in Hungary's warm-up friendlies, managing just 1 goal across matches against Cyprus and Ireland. That said, they did keep 2 clean sheets to extend an impressive unbeaten run, now stands at 11 matches. They'll line up in a 5-3-2 formation and certainly have the organisation and defensive ability to frustrate their esteemed group stage opponents. Portugal also kept back-to-back clean sheets in friendlies against Spain and Israel, securing a 0-0 draw in Madrid before goals from Bruno Fernandes, Cristiano Ronaldo and João Cancelo ensured a 4-0 win over the latter. 18-year-old Nuno Mendes got the nod over Rafael Guerreiro in that game at left-back and could be a breakout star of this summer, as Renato Sanchez was 5 years ago. These sides were opponents in 2016 in what was one of the games of the tournament, certainly one of the games of the group stages, as Portugal came from behind on 3 occasions to draw 3-3. Instead, look out for a low-scoring game in this one with Portugal win, despite their remarkable array of attacking talent under the ever-pragmatic Fernando Santos.
Excellent. Well done, gentlemen. A good segment. Good to have the Just a Minute section back. I feel at home doing that. We're going to finish now. We've been given the power to pick a top tip each by Bet Victor going into the first round of fixtures. Martin, we'll come to you first. What are you saying?
Yeah, I'm going for the Belgium-Russia game on Saturday night. And I just, like Jonathan says, echo those sentiments. I really worry about Russia's defence up against Romelu Lukaku. So I'm going for Lukaku to score 2 or more goals in this game. The reasoning, Russia have only kept 1 clean sheet in 9 competitive internationals since the start of last year, despite only playing Serbia, Hungary, Turkey, Slovakia, Slovenia and Malta in that time. Lukaku has 3 goals in 3 starts against Russia, scored 20 goals in his last 18 internationals. And the first of 18 games in which he scored 2 or more goals for Belgium was against Russia.
We got any odds? Any odds for that? Any best price?
Yeah, so that the odds have been boosted from 7-1 to 15-2. So a slight boost there. Still a very good price. I think that's the industry leading price. So I'll be all over it personally.
I mean, Lukaku could be costing BetVictor some money through this tournament. I feel at the moment. Jonathan, Ukraine based, aren't you? You like Ukraine?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sort of about to echo what I said in just a minute, but I think this Ukraine side is actually, and it's not just the talent in the squad. I think we touched on this last week. The fact that they do have the ongoing war, and we've seen that blow up this week in the controversy of the shirt, which, if you haven't seen, it's got a map of Ukraine sort of stitched into the weave of the shirt, but it includes Crimea, which was annexed by Russia in 2014, plus the territories of Donbass and Luhansk where the war was going on. The Russian Foreign Ministry's protested about that and about a slogan on the one on the outside, one on the inside of the collar. On the outside says "Glory to Ukraine." On the inside says "Glory to the heroes." I think I'm right in saying UEFA banned the one on the inside of the collar that you couldn't see anyway, because it's seen as being deliberately provocative, because that phrase was used in the Euromaidan protests against Yanukovych, the Kremlin-backed president, in 2014. It was also a slogan of Ukrainian fascists in the 1930s, although it dates back way before that and has significant use after that. So there's been protests from Jewish and Polish groups because the OUN, the Ukrainian fascists, committed atrocities against Poles and Jews. So it's a complicated, messy situation. But what underlying that is the fact that there is a common cause here for Ukraine, that they are playing for more than just a football match. They are playing for a country that is under threat. And I don't trust the Dutch at all under De Boer. So I fancy Ukraine to win it, and I can see both teams scoring. The Dutch at home, Depay, his pace against the Ukrainian defence. But as I say, I think Ukraine could nick this. So I'm looking at that as sort of Ukraine 2-1, 3-1, something like that. So Ukraine to win, both teams to score, which appears to be 12-1 when I look. But has that been inflated?
I've still got 12-1 best price down here, but that could be wrong. Martin probably knows. Yeah,
so people agree with Jonathan. That's actually come in a bit. The sort of backing of Ukraine has come in a bit for this game. So the price has dropped to 10-1, but BetVictor have boosted again to an industry-leading price of 11-1 for that bet.
Thank you very much, BetVictor. Mine to finish. Jonathan will be surprised to learn Villa are involved somehow in the one that I've picked. So basically, John McGinn scored a lot of goals for Scotland in qualifying. He plays more as a number 10 for Scotland. He's good for a goal. I fancy Scotland to actually get out of the group and perhaps nick second. So I've gone for McGinn to score and Scotland to win, and that's a 7-1 best price, unless Martin's got information that differs from that.
Yeah, again, these must be good tips because they're shortening all the time. So yeah, that's come into 5-1. But again, BetVictor, lovely chaps and chapettes that they are, have boosted that to 13-2. So all of those boosts and tips can be found again in the sort of link that we'll post in the description along with our bet builder. So yeah, you can find them all there if you fancy a little tipple.
Yeah, and that does us, chaps. Thanks ever so much to BetVictor for sponsoring the show. It's really great to have them involved and go through some of the odds and the movers and the shakers in the betting markets as well. Thanks to Jonathan and Martin for joining me, and thanks to you guys as well for watching and listening to the podcast. However you're taking your podcast, whether it be via video or audio, if you could leave us a review or a nice comment, give us a like. And if you are watching via YouTube, if you subscribe with your post notifications on, you won't miss a single thing. That was the second show out of 8, so there's still plenty more to come. I hope everyone enjoys the early days of the Euros. We're all really looking forward to it. Have a good weekend. Cheers.